What do you guys
I did purchase one of those egg timers where it explodes, and I left it at home. But it's the Bob Woodward Memorial Egg Timer. Okay, the history of the Mickey Mouse Club as Cliff Notes. Even as early as the late 40s, Walt was interested in getting in TV. TV had been demonstrated at early World's Fairs. He had seen that. And he knew the TV was something he wanted to get involved with. When it came to building Disneyland, he didn't have enough money. So he felt that everybody wanted a Disney TV show. If he provided them with a Disney TV show, by golly, what would happen is that they would give money to build the park. Well, NBC wasn't interested, CBS wasn't interested, ABC was interested. ABC was at the bottom of the ratings. Milton Berle used to joke, if the Russians ever drop a bomb, let's all run to ABC, because they've never had a hit. So, ABC figured, even if they lost money on investing in Disneyland, just by having Walt on their network, it would make them a significant network, and it was. When Disneyland premiered, it was in the top 10 of the TV shows. Now, Walt had submitted to them, not the Disneyland TV show, but 4 possible shows. One was going to be a weekly half-hour show called The Walt Disney Story, or The Walt Disney Show, which would show nothing but cartoons. And a second show that was called World of Tomorrow, which would be a documentary about what was going to be happening in the world of the future. And another one called True Life Show, which would use some of the True Life adventure clips. And then a children's show called the Mickey Mouse Club, which was going to be 15 minutes each day and would be filmed at Disneyland. What there would be multiple adult hosts, which was very common in those days on kids shows, and the kids would be sitting in bleachers, and sometimes they'd be pulled out to do things like contests or whatever. Well, ABC didn't like all of that. They jumbled it together, so you got the Disneyland TV show, which again had a True Life segment, had the cartoon segment, had the Tomorrowland segment, and a Frontierland segment. Hugely popular, so they went back to Walt and they said, yes, we want, the kiddie show, and Walt said, fine, we can produce that 15 minutes a day. ABC said, absolutely not, it's going to be an hour. Because we are selling to sponsors 15-minute blocks. So it has to be an hour. And so Walt went to Bill Walsh, who was the producer of the Disneyland TV show, and Bill Walsh was tired. He had been producing hour-long shows every week, and as a movie producer, he wasn't used to producing that much material that quickly, but he had done it. He was looking to take a vacation, and Walt says, but I want you on this new project. I want you on the Mickey Mouse Club, and you're going to produce an hour every day of the week. So what Bill Walsh did was very smart, is he said, well, let's configure it just like an experience that you would have in a movie theater. So what you would have is you would have a newsreel, you'd have a cartoon, maybe you'd have a musical or comedy short, and then you'd have, some type of drama type thing. So they had the serial, the Spin and Marty serials, all of that. They had the music comedy thing, which was, showcasing the Mouseketters. They had the mouse cartoon. They had the newsreels, all of that. My gosh, went on the air October 3rd, 1955, and was immediate hit. That same day, in the morning, Captain Kangaroo premiered. Now, the Mickey Mouse Club premiered in the afternoon, so it was in the 5 to 6 slot, and its only competition was the Howdy Doody Show, which was very popular, and the Pinky Lee Show. Pinky Lee was the inspiration for Pee Wee Herman, if none of you are aware of that. And boy, just knocked both of them out of the park. Now, Walt had this idea. He wanted real kids doing this, and my gosh, instant hit, was not prepared for it. Just like not prepared for Davy Crockett being a huge hit, not prepared for the Mickey Mouse Club being a huge hit. Kids just fell in love with them. Kids wanted to be the Mouseketters. So how exciting is that going to be? So for that first year, ran for an hour, very popular. Second year, ran for an hour, was a little less popular. and a little less profitable because Walt was spending more money and ABC had locked down a budget. So the first year was budgeted at $4 million, second year was budgeted at $5 million, but the ratings were not increasing exponentially. So at that particular point, for the third season, Walt knocked it down to a half hour. And then for the fourth season, what happened is they did reruns of the first 2 seasons. And the budget for that year was $400,000. And then they said, that's it. You know, the Mouseketters are over. American Bandstand has come on, for crying out loud. That's what kids are watching now. They want to be cool and hip. They don't want to be nice guys like Tommy Cole, you know, that all of this, you know, it's just faded away. We want to be hip and cool. And so they canceled the Mickey Mouse Club. The Mouseketters went on tours to Australia, were hugely successful. The show then went into syndicated reruns in '62, hugely successful for another 4 years. And then in '75, Disney released it again, the original Mickey Mouse Club, hugely successful. And Disney says, well, we know what we're doing. We're going to have the new Mickey Mouse Club. How many of you remember those Mouseketters? All right, I don't hear any of you singing those songs. All right, so Walt was very specific. Walt said, I want ordinary kids. You know, I don't want, you know, all of these fancy, you know, and all these stage mothers and all that. But eventually, Bill Walsh realized you had to pull in kids who had some professional experience, so they knew how to do these things. All right? But they came from all over. When Johnny Crawford auditioned, he auditioned as a fencing act with his brother. And they said, well, that's very good, but we don't see the Mouseketters doing that. You know, Zorro, maybe, but not the Mouseketters. Can you sing? And Johnny Crawford was smart enough to say, yes, I can. Yes, his brother was not smart enough to pipe up and say, yes, I could sing, you know, a song here. And Johnny Crawford was there for the first season, and of course, Johnny didn't really want to sing or dance. Johnny wanted to be an actor. So he started adding in lines and all of this, you know, and at the end of that first season, he went on to other opportunities, as they say at Disney, and he became a rodeo performer, of course, 5 years on Rifleman, where he was nominated for an Emmy Award for his acting on that, and went on to a fulfilling life. Now, Sherry Alberoni, who was known as Sherry Allen in those days because her agent felt the last name was too ethnic, Walt had specifically said, and this quote is in every book written about the Mickey Mouse Club, I want ordinary kids, I don't want kids who blow a trumpet and do tap dancing at the same time. Sherry auditioned by blowing a trumpet and tap dancing at the same time. She nearly knocked out her teeth. Now Johnny, of course, had a little romance with Mouseketter Karen, so maybe he'll talk about that. And I bring that up because Sherry had a pretty hot and heavy relationship with Cubby, teenage romance, so maybe we'll hear a little bit about that. Sherry, of course, went on to do voices for animated cartoons, so you're more familiar with her voice maybe than what it is. Tommy Cole showed up to audition as an accordion player. And as soon as he was cast, he never touched another accordion again in his entire life. He had a beautiful singing voice, but he could not dance. He could not, but he was personable, he was cooperative, you know, he had a pompadour, and so he, I know the ghost of Pompadour passed. So what happened is he took dance lessons. Some of the Mouseketter girls helped him dance. There's a whole Mickey Mouse Club magazine article showing Doreen and Cheryl helping him dance and learn some dance steps. And by golly, Tommy was on all 3 seasons there. Wonderful, wonderful singer, wonderful voice. Was the only one who could match Darlene. Disney Publicity tried to put them together as a couple. But there was a love-hate relationship there, so we'll see what happens with that. And when Tommy was on My 3 Sons, he hooked up, I've got 4 minutes, 3.5. Tommy hooked up with a makeup artist and learned makeup to go on to a fulfilling career. Doreen. Doreen is one of my favorite Mouseketeers of all time because she is the naughty Mouseketeer. Doreen, red-headed and a firecracker. She was born in London, and how she got the job was she was working at her dad's dance studio, the Rainbow Studios, and the call came from the Disney Studios looking for kids who they could send over to audition. Doreen answered the phone and says, "I know the perfect little girl to send to that audition." And she was a good singer, she was a good dancer, excellent comedian, wonderfully expressive face, huge eyes, all of that. She was friends with Darlene, eventually became good friends with Cheryl and Annette. But boy, she was the naughty Mouseketeer. She hung out with bad boy Lonnie. Lonnie Burr, the bad boy of the Mouseketeers, even to this day. She hung out with him a little bit. She was married at an early age. She became a single mother at an early age. And so she's got some fascinating stories to tell, including about when she was in the USO over there in Vietnam, and she shot a guy in self-defense. But we may not have time for all of those stories. And I only have a minute and a half left to tell you how thankful we are today, because all of those Mouseketeers went on to rich and fulfilling careers. And I'm just so thankful that they have taken time to come back to share about a few moments that they had in their childhood to help us remember our childhood. And I'm a half second short. There we go. Thank you very much.
Well done.
Jim, you outdid yourself. I think you presented some things that maybe even the Mouseketeers didn't remember about themselves. Our next portion is we're going to have the Mouseketeers come up and talk a little bit. If Alex Mayer will please come up, he's our moderator.
Am I on? Yes, you are. So I guess I will introduce each of the Mouseketeers. Who wants to go first? Oldest to youngest, or tallest to shortest, or?
All the above.
Well, actually, I'll Sherry, please come on up. Yeah.
Well, she's sure not the tallest.
But I am the youngest.
I'm gonna get
We're going to be nice tonight. No mouse can gossip.
We had that last time.
That's right.
Yeah. But I'll bring up Tommy next. Yes, Tommy.
I won't pick on you.
Yeah. Doreen, please come on up. Last but not least, Mr. Johnny Crawford.
All right.
So, it's like dinner. Pretty good, huh?
It was great.
That's awesome. Anyway, you know, being a big, huge Walt Disney fan, and there's probably a few more out there.
I think so.
Yeah, we of course would like to know, first of all, your first encounter with Mr. Disney. And I can share your story.
Want to go first? Okay. Well, my very first encounter was before I became a Mouseketeer. It was in 1955 at the opening of Disneyland in October 3rd. And I was a little bluebird. And I had sold in Southern California more candy than any other child. And my prize was to be at Disneyland on opening day and to make an ice cream sundae for Walt Disney in the Carnation ice cream shop on Main Street. And so I was there, and it was a very hot day. I'm sure you all know the history and remember all the history of opening of Disneyland, and I have a picture of me holding an ice cream sundae, and Mr. Disney's on the other side of the sundae holding it, and it was so hot, and the photographers kept screaming, just one more shot, one more shot. And the ice cream sundae is melting all down his beautiful gray silk suit. And we're smiling. I went, oh no, oh no. So that was my first time I met him. And then the second time was when the next year when I did become a Mouseketter. And I remember I had gotten the job and I was wearing my uniform and I was so proud of my name and my ears. And my mom and I are walking down Mickey Lane, and we were coming out of the administration building, and he was going into his office, and he said, "Hey, Mouseketter Sherry." And I said, "Oh, Mommy, Mr. Disney knows my name." My mother didn't want to break my heart, saying, "Man, can read, honey." So that was my first real talking with him.
You took my story.
I did. I took all of our good lines.
No, the same thing happened to me. I honestly did have the same story. My mother did the same thing with me because I said, "Mr. Disney knows me." He said, "Hi." He called me by name. And I did the same thing. My mom said, "Tommy, look at your sweater." And Mr. Disney was always very gentle with us. We were a little intimidated by him because we knew the buck stopped with him. And if he didn't like us, we were off the show. So we were always really cognizant that he was the boss, but he was always very gentle with us. He was on the set every day.
Wow.
Every day. I had one, just a very quick story. I used to do all the ins and outs for the, like you saw in the newsreels, and I'd be talking into camera into a teleprompter. Well, there was one long scene I was doing, it took about 2 minutes. 2 minutes talking through a teleprompter is pretty long. And I saw him out of the corner of my eye, he was standing right next to the camera. And he was making me nervous, and I kept blowing my line. So I asked the AD, "Come up please, would you please ask Mr. Disney if he could move out of my eye line just a little bit, because it's making me so nervous, I keep blowing the lines." And I saw the AD go up to him and whisper in his ear, and he looked at me and said, "Give me this," and walked away. Well, there was a PR guy on the set. The next day, in the newspapers, and all the newspapers, Mouseketter throws Walt Disney off the set. And I thought for sure my career was done. He had a sense of humor, so it didn't happen. The PR guy got fired. That was my one. But he was always just so nice to us. He was very gentle with us, and but the buck did stop with him.
And we called him Uncle Walt.
Uncle Walt.
The first time I met Mr. Disney, I was doing the Donald Duck special, and I was just thrilled because I love Donald Duck. And so when I walked on the set and realized it was exactly like the office he had on the television show, I was just amazed. And he was sitting there, and now I'm in the scene with him. I was just blown away. And he said, "Doreen, I'm very happy that you're doing this show." And he says, "I know that you really like Donald Duck. That's why we're having you be part of this particular segment. But do you realize you work for Mickey Mouse?" And that was the first time I realized that his characters were real living beings to him, and they were very special. From that time on, I knew I was in trouble.
Gosh. I used to see him walking around the studio a lot. The first time I saw him, I think was in the restroom.
Well, there you go. You heard it here first.
Yeah.
He was very gracious.
Great, this will be on scene.
Next. So I assume that you all, you auditioned for the role. When did you first find out? What were you doing at that moment when you found out you're going to be a Mouseketter?
Oh, gosh. I don't remember that one. I don't remember what I had for breakfast today. It's hard to be nostalgic when you can't remember anything. The age Right. No, and you know, it's funny because the Mickey Mouse Club at that time, and I don't mean this the way it's going to sound, I had been working since I was 4 years old, so
Just another gig.
it was just another show, truly. It wasn't what it became. And now we realize that we were so blessed and so honored to be a part of the Disney legend, part of the Disney family. And I could cry just thinking about it, what an honor it was. But at the time, it was just another show. And, you know, I was doing a movie with Cesar Romero the week before, and you know, and then I left the Mickey Mouse Club on Friday, and Monday I started on a movie called Dance With Me, Henry, which was the last film that Bud Abbott and Lou Costello made together. So, you know, that was my next gig. And then after that, you know, on at Columbia Studios for 7 years, where I played Ed Wynn's granddaughter, and went to Europe to do the 3 Worlds of Gulliver. So it was just another show. And it really, for me, it wasn't until later when I grew up and got some sense and realized how blessed I truly was. In a Mouseketter, to be a Mouseketter. Once a Mouseketter, always a Mouseketter. And we're not old, we're original.
I do remember. Specifically, I had auditioned for a movie with Edward G. Robinson on Warner Brothers on the day of the audition. And as you said, or someone said, I played accordion. And I mean, I played it for 5 years. I was doing the Flight of the Bumblebee and Lady of Spain. It's awful. But it got me the audition because I played accordion with 4 other kids. So 5 of us playing accordion, and I singing Mexicali Rose was really something to hear. And I didn't want to go to this audition. I got this job at Warner Brothers. And as it turned out, it was cut and I didn't get the job. I saw on the high there, I don't want to go to the audition, Mom. But she said, no, Tommy, your music teacher set this up, you should go. So I went, the luckiest thing I ever did, because the casting director, for some reason, took a liking to my voice. Had me come back for 2 more auditions within about a month. 2 weeks went by, and they put me in a screen test for Spinning Marty to see if I was okay. Because I'd never really been on camera, because I was a singer in the radio, and I used to do little local TV shows and play my accordion and look cute. So they put me on the screen test. They gave me a trial contract as a Mouseketter. As you heard, I didn't dance. I sang. But they put me in all kinds of dance lessons almost every night of the week for over a month, 2 months, to see if I could pick it up. The girls did help me, and Lonnie and Bobby and Sharon and all the kids who really were pros in dancing. They came out of the womb dancing. They helped me, and they kept me on the show. That's what really happened with me. I auditioned at the right time, at the right place, and got the job.
That's awesome. Doreen, do you remember what you were doing when you got the call? Or?
Well, as was mentioned before, my father had a dance studio, and we had people like Leslie Caron practicing for the musicals at MGM, and we had Debbie Reynolds rehearsing for Singing in the Rain, and we had Mr. Balanchine with the New York City Ballet. So that's the environment I grew up in. My father was in the business, and my mother, Sid Tracy and Hay, they were known as. And there was a call that came in, and I just happened to be at the front desk. And it was Lee Trader, who was our casting director. And he said, we're looking for talented little boys and girls that can sing and dance, play an instrument. Do you know of any? So of course I did. When is the interview? So I took the information, gave it to my father, and he mentioned to me, he said, Doreen, I run a dance studio. You can't be the only one to go out on this interview. I have to post it, and all of the students have to participate. I was crushed. But I did get the job, and that I still didn't know I was going to be a Mouseketter. I thought it was just for a group of children working with Mr. Disney on the new Disney show. I didn't even know what a Mickey Mouse
None of us knew what a
Mouseketter
Mouseketter was.
In fact, Bobby and I went to Western Costumes to try on uniforms to be approved by Disney, because they still hadn't put the actual costumes we were going to wear on the show. They were still playing with ideas. And we both said, hi, what are we doing? Are we going to be models? He said, I don't know what this is for either. I'm sure if he came here and said, oh yeah, during remember. We tried on several outfits and they took photographs. In fact, someone has the one where we have our backs to the camera. Did you
And
get
I
that?
recognized you immediately.
That'd be a good thing.
Anyway, finally, it kind of gelled. Somewhere along the line, when I saw all the rest of you, I realized, oh, I'm going to be working with him.
You know, I recognized Doreen because she always wore these little pigtails, little things here, and that's how I recognized her. Don't take it wrong.
But when I saw the group, they finally did say that there's going to be a new show and that you will be Mouseketters, but it still didn't make sense to us exactly what we were going to be doing. We just knew we were going to sing and dance. In fact, when I knew how tough it was going to be, was when Lonnie and Sharon walked in, and they walked in like superstars, because they had been dancing on the Donald O'Connor show, and they were the cream of the crop of dancers, and I thought, oh, this is going to be tough.
That's fabulous dancers.
Yeah, to this day. And you knew as a child you were going to have competition to keep the job.
John, do you remember?
I remember the auditions. I remember the first time we drove onto the lot, the Disney lot. It was very exciting. I was a big fan of Davy Crockett and you know, the show that was on the Disney show. What was it called? The World of Disney? Wonderful World. And I loved all the feature animated films, Snow White and Peter Pan and Lady and the Tramp. So it was very exciting to be there, and I also was kind of in the dark about what kind of a show it was going to be, but I was taking fencing and dancing at the Falcon Studios on Hollywood Boulevard near Western, and they got a phone call from Disney, and I just happened to be answering the phone that day.
This story sounds...
Playing the trumpet.
No, I was lying about that. But one of the things about the auditions that I recall vividly is being so impressed by the talent of all these other children. I was very intimidated. I wasn't really confident about dancing. I could do simple balletic positions, but I remember Doreen's audition more than anything else about the experience, because she did a wonderful job, and I got to see it twice because I got a call back. Who couldn't believe it, you know? And so I got to see you do it twice, and it was just adorable. And what was the song, Cross Over the Bridge?
Cross Over the Bridge.
That was just...
Patty Page hit.
Yeah, and you did it so confidently, and I hated you. Oh yeah. So, but I had a backup offer. You see, if that didn't pan out, I was also at the same time auditioning for a major role in a movie in MGM called Bus Stop. Well, it wasn't really a major role. There was a scene at the bus stop where these two kids are bothering Don Murray and Marilyn Monroe. And I really wanted to do that because I loved Marilyn Monroe. And I wasn't confident about my dancing, you know. And so I thought, I think I'm going to get this. I got a call back on that too. And but unfortunately, I was not chosen for the Marilyn Monroe film, and so I took the offer from Disney. And it was a learning experience, but it was, I really, I loved the studio. It was very clean, and they had a cafeteria, and we would stand in line at lunchtime, and one time I ran into the auditorium. My grandmother, who was my guardian, would save a place in line, and I ran into one day, and she said, "Here, get in front of me, get in front of me." And I got in front of her, and I looked up, and I was standing in front of Walt Disney. He would stand in line just like everybody else. What a fool! But it was a great experience, and when they released me, after the first season, I was heartbroken, and I was a has-been at 9. You go on.
So, John, you touched on a little bit.
This is why he was nominated for an Emmy.
So Johnny touched on it a little bit, but I want to ask you all, you can all answer, be like, what was a typical day like on the set or at the studio? Like you started, what time did you start, makeup, all that stuff?
There were so many rules and laws back then. I think that a lot of them have been let go. They're not quite as strict as they were. But we were only allowed to be at the studio for 8 hours a day. And that 8 hours included 3 hours of school, 1 hour for lunch and recreation, and then 3 hours four hours on the set. And on the set could be in wardrobe or in rehearsing or in front of the camera, but it could only be 4 hours. I don't think we never worked at night. I think we had to be out of there at 6 o'clock, and I don't think we could come in before 7 or 8. And our schooling had to be in 20-minute increments, and if you only were in 15 minutes, then you had to come back and then you still were on the clock, and you had to get those 15 minutes.
It was really a lot of work. We didn't consider it work, we considered it fun. But I look back on it, they were very good at time management. There were really, the first year, 3 groups of kids. There were 24 kids the first year. And they split them up into 3 different groups, where one group would be rehearsing, another group would be in school, another group would be filming. And it would go back and forth like that. So there was always Mouseketters busy doing something. There was no time down. And then they'd have us work on the weekends at Disneyland.
Oh, wow.
And we'd go down and perform at Disneyland. And quite frankly, it was great fun.
Did you get time and a half?
No. Now, I'm in charge of a union now. I would make sure. But, I mean, it was fantasy. These are kids. We're kids on a hit show having the time of their lives. And we did. I mean, we'll have our 60th anniversary in a couple of years. How many people can say that?
So you did have breaks. I mean, you were telling us you did have like half-hour breaks?
An hour break.
Hour break. Other than
For lunch.
For lunch.
For lunch, but then didn't you have like recess?
No, that hour was...
So you didn't go like running through the animation building and all the...
Well, we did that too. That's another story.
Yeah.
No, they worked us very hard, but we didn't consider it work. And we were just very, very busy.
It was play acting.
Right.
You know, it just was all play acting, and it was fun, and you're with other kids.
And if you weren't rehearsing or putting in your time at school, you'd be locked in a projection room watching cartoons.
That's all.
It was really a magical time.
Right.
It really was.
So I want to bring up another dirt that Jim kind of started. We know there are questions on the set, so we want to know if those are just rumors or was that true. You guys can.
I'll go first only because I was one of the older kids with crushes.
Okay.
I mean, I was almost 14 when I started. I was 13 when I was put on the show. I was one of the oldest kids, Darlene, Bobby, and myself. We all had crushes that first year. My crush was Darlene. Lonnie had a crush on Annette. Bobby had crushes on everybody. But there were these little romances that went on. But the second year comes, and now we're like brothers and sisters. There's no crushes. We act like a family. We fight like a family. We love each other like a family. We work together as a team, and that we became just this big group who really loved each other. I mean,
Karen, Cubby and I were only 9 years old, so there really weren't crushes. But Cubby was the closest in my age, and so I liked Cubby. But in later years, when Cubby and I were 19, we had a nightclub act, and we dated then. We thought ourselves as Louis Freeman, Keely Smith type of things. And all these years later, now Cubby and I, we still have an act, and we were the opening, we did the act on the inaugural cruise of the Fantasy ship, and that was just a thrill. And then we've done our show here a couple of times at Disney World. So it's great, all these years later, 60 years later, to be singing and dancing and doing the same patter back and forth with someone that you did when you were 9 years old with.
What happens with all of us when we're on stage, we know each other so well, like Sherry or Noreen or Johnny. I haven't worked with, I haven't seen Johnny in a long time, and I'm sure he has the same reaction. When you're working with people day in and day out, they can start a sentence and finish it. If you screw up on a line or you screw up on a dance step, the other person takes over for you and covers for you, and that's how we work together. And of course, a lot of you probably work in your job place like that too. People who pull for you and watch your back. Well, that's what we were as kids.
During the 80s, we did reunion shows at Disneyland and a lot of tours, and we appeared here also. And we were doing 6 shows a day and 16 costume changes, singing the original songs and doing the original dances all the days of the week. And it was just great fun. And like Tommy said, you're looking over at the person next to you and maybe whispering, "What's the next line?" That step. But that's great fun.
So how, when you all were doing, I'm sorry, did you have anything to add to that? So during the show, you all are very famous, very popular, right? In your personal lives, did celebrity affect you all in different ways? How did it affect you? Did it bother you? Did you, I mean, the kids in the neighborhood wanted your autograph now? Or?
I think all of us were pretty grounded, especially by our parents. Fame was great. It was wonderful. I mean, it's a wonderful thing to happen to anyone. We were all invited to the A1 party, the #1 parties in town. Now, I knew my days were done because I stopped being invited to those parties. When the show was off the air, I went on as a singer in nightclubs and went to college, a couple of years of college, and was just making a living as a singer and somewhat of an actor, but I made a living more as a singer. But fame is great. And I don't have any regrets. I'm one of those child actors or singers who had a wonderful childhood. I think Sherry had the same. Johnny has wonderful stories on Johnny. I mean, what a break he got. Good thing he got let go at Disney, because look what he did with the rifle. Great show. I don't think any of us have any real regrets. I mean, I'd love to be a star again and make more money. It was a great time for our life.
But I don't think that people talk about Hollywood kids and the evils of it and growing up in Hollywood, and Hollywood is not the problem. It's the lack of parental guidance that's the problem. And I can remember my mom and dad telling me that if I get the job, then thank God. If I don't get the job, don't worry about it. You'll get another job, and if you don't, then that's not what God's plan is for you. So it was never that I wasn't smart enough, or cute enough, or talented enough. I mean, my family wasn't looking at or needing my paycheck, and that's how it was with most of us. We were just normal, really normal, regular. Are any of us normal? No. Well, we were just normal kids who could sing and dance and act and whatever. But I think basically we really had normal childhoods and went home and had to do, had to run errands and had to make our beds and clean up our rooms and things like that. And then if you go back when we go back to public school, there was the inevitable teasing and,
I had firecrackers thrown at my feet in high school.
Wow.
These kids were jealous when I was on television. And that's when my parents put me in a private school finally. I went to a school called Hollywood Professional School where just only pros went, pro kids went. Either they were kids in show business or they were kids who had been kicked out of schools. So we all congregated together. Going back to a public school after you're on television on a hit show is kind of tough. Kids don't understand, your teachers don't understand. So it was better that I went back. Because most of my years, all my high school years were in private school because I couldn't keep up on teachers and don't understand in public schools that show kids, have to be taught also that they have to understand that we're working just like regular people making a living and we're squeezing schooling in. The schooling I got from studio schools prepared me for UCLA or any school I wanted to go to. I had some wonderful teachers.
You were class president.
Well, I was class president
You
in high
went
school.
professional, Johnny?
I didn't. My mother did.
Your mother went to college professional?
With Mickey Rooney.
Yes.
Wow, I didn't know
A
that.
lot of show kids went to, now it's a parking lot, tore it down. It's a wonderful school. Well, I mean, you had, as a child, you were more in vaudeville, your whole family was in vaudeville. This was a real pro. I mean, she was from a pro family, and she knew nothing but showbiz.
Yeah, and in fact, my whole life, either being in front of the camera or on the stage, I can't get away from the business. I have a passion for it. I am uncomfortable in anything else. So I worked behind the scenes for many, many years and enjoyed it. Not as much as going out and hoofing it up. Did I say it correctly?
Yes, you did. It's a word.
It is a word.
It is a word.
But you have to have that. It's sort of like part of me. It's who I am. And I wouldn't have it any other way. You meet all the craziest people in the world, just like Johnny. We didn't have a car when we were going to Disney Studio. We lived in Hollywood. And his grandma used to come and pick us up and take us to the studio. And Johnny was always into this music that was passé to me. He loved all the 1930s, the rhythm of the 30s. And he'd be singing all these nostalgic songs. And I said, would you please shut up? And he would just look over, and I keep telling him about it. He says he doesn't remember. And I was just a little brat to him. And he would go on singing, when my baby goes out with me. And he'd be singing away, and he'd never shut up.
I haven't thought of that song in a while.
I have to tell you a quick story about Johnny, because he won't mention it. But my daughter is an event planner, and last couple months ago she hired Johnny Crawford and the most incredible orchestra, the Johnny Crawford Orchestra, to perform, and it's a swing orchestra. And the dance floor was packed, and everybody was singing the songs and dancing, and it just was incredible. He's a wonderful musician, and he's a singer, and he's in the tux, the white tie and tails. It's fabulous, a great show.
As we booked for this show, the orchestra, that's what I heard.
What?
Oh, yeah. And isn't that right? He's going to be booked? Never mind.
Yeah. So Johnny, when you were on the second season, were you already on the rifleman, or were you at home watching your friends on TV?
No, after they dropped my option at Disney, I was all washed up. And
There we go.
but my agent felt sorry for me. After a couple of months, she started sending me on auditions for. Because I was frankly so depressed. I wasn't eating. And
You used to be much taller.
yeah. And and she took one look, and we had a meeting. She looked me over, and she started sending me on auditions for, this was a short time after World War II and all the refugee and so I started getting parts as sad orphans. And I had quite a string of sad roles. And but I always loved Westerns, and I wanted to be a cowboy more than it. Well, I couldn't decide whether I wanted to be Donald O'Connor or Gary Cooper. I couldn't get a job on a Western because all the casting directors, because of the dramatic roles I was doing as a refugee in Europe, they couldn't see me as an American kid in the Old West, but I'm sure there were some kids in the Old West who had French accents. But I finally, and also, they felt, I think, that, this is what my agent told me, made me feel that they expected a Western kid to have, rosy cheeks and blonde hair like Brandon Walt, and I was very thin and haggard looking, and I had dark hair, and I didn't smile a lot, but I landed the job. It was a Western, and I was asked if I could ride a horse. Nobody had asked me that before on these auditions for Westerns, and I said yes, and but I never had. But I took to it right away, and I got one job led to another, and then one day after school, my mother picked me up when we were going to an audition. She would have always a change of clothes to fit the character role, and there were jeans in the back of the seat and a cowboy hat. And she says, "We're going for an episode of Zane Grey Theater, and it's a pilot for a Western series." And oh boy, was I excited! And then they introduced me to Chuck Connors, and I knew I was sunk because I didn't look anything like it. And I was, the one good thing about it was I figured if I did get the job, it would last a while because even if I grow a foot or two, I'm still going to be short enough to be, I'll look young next to him. What was the question?
I want to add just one thing that Johnny touched on, that were the unsung heroes of our childhood were our mothers. I used to go on a lot of interviews, and a lot of us went on interviews, and we didn't drive as kids, and either our moms or dads, but my dad did some time where the mothers stayed home and the dads worked in my childhood. And my mom would take me everywhere on these auditions, and tirelessly it'd take us every day to auditions at times. And it's really our moms who kept our careers going and gave us the little pat on the back when we fell down, when we got turned down. Then, just like Sherry said, there'll be another job. And there was. So it's our moms really who helped our careers along, and they were a great support to us. And just
My mother didn't even want me to be in the business. I was the one. I was the stage.
We were pushing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was pushing, and she played the piano. She was a wonderful pianist, and that's all she wanted to do. And she would get a call, and she'd be driving me to Culver City or to the Valley, and she wanted to stop it, and because I never got anything for a long time before the Mouseketters. I'd been knocking on doors for a couple of years before that, and I was just too timid, and I didn't have any experience, and so I was very lucky that she knew that I wanted to do it.
And kids in show business really, you either really, really, really love your mom because you're with your mom all the time. Your mom by law had to be at the studio with you until you were 8, or a guardian, until you're 18. And in my case, my mom was with me every day. And you either get really close to your mom and really, really love her, or in other cases, you get to feel smothered by her and you don't love her quite so much. And my mom was just my best friend. And with my kids, I didn't spend that kind of time with my children. They were in public schools. I didn't have to be with them all the time. And so your mom becomes your closest friend, your advisor, your big sister, your pal, your everything. And I think it makes it tough when they're not with you anymore. But kids in show business really, I think, a lot of them have wonderful relationships with their mom or their guardian because they are with them so much.
But one thing, may I add, one thing is that each one of us up here, even though we had our parents, you have to say we had a drive within ourselves to go forward and want to go on these auditions, to want to participate. We were competitors. If we hadn't been theatrical artists at a young age, I'm sure we would have been in gymnastics, or we would have been in a baseball team, some competitive sport, because we have a competitive spirit.
I wanted the money, Clint.
You have to have that drive to do that, to want to listen to an adult, to follow instructions, to follow through, to put the extra hours in.
Well, I think all of us wanted, we enjoyed getting out there on stage. We were all hands.
And the camaraderie.
And we had a great time together, working together. The more applause we got, the better we were.
We liked it.
And socialized together too. Roy Williams, big Mouseketter Roy, he used to have birthday parties. He had a beautiful pool. The whole backyard in his home there in the valley had tiki torches and it was a luau decor, and I'd never seen anything like that, and it was just so great. And he would have birthday parties, swim parties for us during the summer.
They were just like family birthday
really
parties
was.
you see with any family. It was just a big mouse family. It was.
That's awesome. I want to ask you all, we all want to know, do you all have any Disney memorabilia, or if you have, what do you have? We want to know. If you want to sell.
I have a swimming pool in the shape of Mickey's head. One ear is a jacuzzi, the other ear is a walk-down barbecue pit, and his cheeks are seats, and you walk down his chin. So that's my biggest memorabilia.
I can't buy that.
No, but I've just been putting things on eBay, and it's amazing how the fans, the people that want this stuff, nothing that really means a lot to me. But if you have 5 or 6 or something, you don't need that. But the Disney memorabilia is just the best, the greatest.
I have a certain amount in the china cabinet. Unfortunately, I threw a lot of them away. I had the original watches. I had about 3 or 4 of those. I had a lot of pins and a lot of things that you can't get anymore.
We still have cells. We still have cells.
We have some things, and we have accumulated. I mean, we've been doing so many of these kinds of appearances through the years, even the last 30 years, where we'll go to Disneyana and we meet people, we're given things. And the Disney Association have given us little things that are just unique for us that we've kept. And I have those kind of, and I cherish those things. I wouldn't sell them because they mean something inside for me. And for my kids too, when I'm going to need something for
You're not going any place.
Not yet. Not yet.
So Doreen, beside your socks, do you have any other?
I love those songs.
I know.
These socks? Yes, I do have some items, but they'll remain with me for a while. Personal pictures of Annette and Cheryl and I together, because we became like a little rat pack.
And they were.
And we were.
No,
Tommy's been on the road with
No,
a couple of us.
we were on, I was on the road with Doreen and Annette, and all through those years, Jimmy, Doreen, Annette, and myself, we would tour all over the United States, and we'd be there presenting, we'd go there for PR for a Disney movie, or we'd enter a town in the morning with sirens and being escorted by police, and we hit about 4 schools and entertain at the school. In the morning, we'd go to lunch with the mayor, then we'd go for 3 or 4 or 5 more shows. We'd open a department store, not a department store, but a market, we'll cut the ribbon, and then we'd go someplace else. I mean, these two, she used to, I was a mess every time I go out there. She even teased me so much. And Annette too. I mean, we were great buddies. We had such a good time together. And we were, again, family working together. Jimmy Dodd was, they broke the mold.
Yeah.
Jimmy was
The way
born.
he was on television is exactly the way he was in person. And the only other person I can say that about is Bobby Burgess. Both of those guys, just exactly the same personality, the warmth and the kindness and the goodness. But Jimmy Dodd was just
Jimmy
incredible.
loved the kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He really, sincerely loved him. And he was just a wonderful person.
He wrote the Mickey Mouse Club March.
And
He wrote most of the
He wrote
songs.
most of the music and all the Doddisms that you saw where it was about, they were quite religious because he was a very religious man.
Yeah.
And he wrote a lot of things that were do what the good book says, those kinds of things. And that was him. That was him. And all those Doddisms that you saw at the end of the show where he'd say something and then, and now the Mouseketters, we'd sing our alma mater, that was Jimmy Dodd. That was the kind of guy he was. It wasn't fake at all. What you saw was what you got.
He's in some old movies.
Yes.
Yeah.
Smokey, I think that's one of
Well, he was in war movies. I used to see him in westerns with Bob Steele and
Yes.
different old western actors.
Rogers and Dale Evans.
Yeah. So he worked before that. He died way too young. He died over in Hawaii from heart disease. And in fact, he called Cubby and myself to ask if we could come over and take over his show. It was a kid's show that he had over there. And then both Cubby and I couldn't. And he died.
1964?
Something, yeah, I think it was 64. Yeah. I think he died at 55. He's a wonderful guy. He was a lot older than most people thought because he had this great shock of red hair. Thick red hair. But he was in his 40s. Everybody thought he was in his 20s. Or late 20s. But he was in his 40s when he did the show. But he was the father figure of our show. And to us, too.
So, John, you didn't tell us about any memorabilia you might have. Do you still have any, like, rifles? How about that?
You know the horse on a town roundup day?
Oh, yeah.
Thing, you know that we're on? I don't have that. I really wanted that. I really wanted it. In fact, I think I've got among my pictures, I've got a wonderful photograph of me and that horse that I just loved. More than any other horse until I got the horse on my and you can see the holster, the Mousketter thing, circle with the thing on the holster, you know, the emblem that's on the holster is coming off because I've been practicing my quick draw so much. And I really love that, but I don't have it anymore. I never had it actually. You know? But you know, I remember my last experience as a Mouseketter was the circus at Disneyland at the end of 1955. And the opening day was so exciting, you know, and we felt so cool getting there early in the morning, and they would be warming up the cars. And we would just have a ball. And there was like one place to stay, and it was a little motel when we were rehearsing. And you know, I loved the train that went around the kingdom, you know, that went to each area. And that's the only thing I have from
The train.
The train.
The train.
Big, huge train.
I'll add a little something to the Utopia cars. We used to go down early in the morning, like Johnny said, and we would warm up, and they let us get in the Utopia cars. And that's when they took the governors off. They could go 30 miles an hour. And we crashed a couple, and they stopped us from ever doing that again. They said, you can't get on there. They stopped us from doing it. Wow. So we used to get it, because they were really to go 30 miles an hour. And we had such a great time, it took our toys away.
Well, I wanted to ask you about the Mickey Mouse Club Circus at Disneyland. Can you tell us a little bit about that? How you participated in that? And
You weren't with us.
Yes, I was second.
Oh, you were there? I don't remember.
Second.
You were, I guess, because you were so young, I didn't register.
Okay.
Well, it's the first time I've said you were young. She and I usually tease each other a lot. You wouldn't notice that. I used to spin Sharon on a rope. We'd come out in our tights, like Peter Pan.
Yeah.
And Peter Pan hat, the green tights and everything. I'm very cute with tight tights. We'd come running out, and Sharon would climb and a couple ropes. I don't know, were you up on a rope?
Bonnie, I tried, I kept falling down.
Typical. And she would climb the rope, and we'd spin. And then the girls would be on ladders, and we'd go like this with it. And this is a real big top. This was not a small circus. This was like going to Ringling Brothers. And there were elephants and lions, but we went to school again 3 hours every morning. We had to drive. That's when the freeway was not there. Right. There was only half there. And my mother drove 4 of us. We'd go from La Cañada, go out and pick up Bonnie Bean Blossom, another Mouseketter, go pick up Annette, and there was one other Mouseketter we used to pick up, and then she would drive all of us to Disneyland, and then back. And it took 2 hours to go to Disneyland.
And it was in the area of where Disneyland was. There was nothing there. It was godforsaken, and I knew it was going to be a terrible experience.
We would go there 2 hours, go to school, then we'd do the circus, and then we had to be done at 6, and we'd drive back. It took about 2 hours to get home. So my mother actually had a nervous breakdown from being so driving every day with kids in the back. Of course, we weren't any help. We were very noisy.
When you were spinning Karen on the rope, Sharon, didn't she regurgitate?
Okay, I'll go into another story. We used to ride on the teacups, and that's when the teacups would really go pretty quick. And I had one of my buddies who was a football player came down one day, and a very strong guy. He got on the teacup with us, and a couple of the girls were with us, and he started going, and we started going faster and faster and faster, and one of the girls got sick. Needless to say, we didn't get anything on us, but everybody else on the ride. You've all finished your meal, haven't you?
It's coming up.
Bonnie Kern, Bobby would spin her, and Bonnie Kern kicked him right in the mouth. Remember that one?
I thought you were going to say something.
No, and he bit her toe in the middle of the scene because she kept sticking her foot in his mouth. And, a lot of it was just kids messing around.
Lonnie and I had a fight down there. We got mad at each other. There was a fist fight, and it lasted about a New York minute. I tell the story. I hit him once and he fell down. He tells the story. He hit me once and I fell down. It was over. So I don't know what the truth was, but we got mad at each other for some reason. Had a little brother fisticuffs, which didn't happen very often.
Yeah. Johnny, what did you do in the circus?
I cried a lot because I knew that they weren't picking up.
There it goes.
Tears are going to start.
Get a tissue, Bob. Give him a tissue. So I want to, so y'all, did you get to hang out in Walt's apartment? Did Walt ever come out there with you guys and just hang out in his apartment in Disneyland?
I used to go up there with Karen. We would get in a lot of mischief, at the studio too, Ask another question.
Disneyland about the fire station. Sharon tells a great story about opening day. She was standing next to Uncle Walt when the kids came through the gate, and she looked up at him, and tears running down his face. He was watching what was going on. But we did get to go up there in later years.
When we were performing down the first time, that was our school. Is above the fire station. We went to school there. Again, 3 hours. And that's where we went to school for a while, and then they had trailers for us out in that one.
So I want to ask about, I think, Johnny, you mentioned Fess Parker. Did any of you get to work with Fess, or did you get to meet him? Or?
Doreen and I worked with Fess on Westward Ho! The Wagon, a movie. The only movie I was ever in. I was always in TV shows, but that's the only movie I ever performed in. And then I got to be friends with Fess in later years. He would have my wife and I, my bride, Lillian here, and I would go up there and stay at his hotel and have us for breakfast.
At the winery.
At the winery.
Right.
Very gracious host, very rich man. he thought because we worked for Walt Disney that we had a part of the years. We had gotten all kinds of, became very rich, which we did. No regrets, but he thought we were very, very rich kids. And he wanted me to invest in a winery with him, and he would have bought all my grapes. I would have had to mortgage everything I had to make a down payment for what he wanted me to get into. But he was a good friend. He was a great, very gracious man, big guy. Well, we did this movie. It was great fun.
It was fun.
Riding horses, and my father was Superman, George Reed, played my father. And a couple, Sebastian Cabot was in it. I got to act with a lot of great actors, awesome actors.
So can you tell us a little bit about what you've done since the Mickey Mouse Club? I know you've already talked a little bit about it, but since then up until now, I guess.
Sure.
Reunion shows, different things you worked on.
Sure. Well, as I told you, first thing I did after the Mickey Mouse Club was Dance with Me, Henry with Evan Costello, and that was great fun. And then after that, I went to Columbia for 7 years, and they sent me to Europe for 6 months, where I filmed The Three Worlds of Gulliver. I was Grumbleklitch, the giant girl with the long braids. And as I said, the Ed Wynn Show, and worked with Paul Peterson on the Donna Reed Show, and just a lot of different television shows and commercials, and several movies and stage shows. And then in 1971, I got, in 68, I went to Vietnam as a USO entertainer, and I made 3 trips to Vietnam. And Bob Hope Show and the Johnny Grant Show, and I took my own show there. And then came back, and I married my medical student boyfriend, Richard, and Tuesday will be our 41st anniversary.
Richard, you're a saint.
Good guy. And then 3 years after we got married, I became pregnant with our oldest daughter, Casey, and at that time I couldn't do on-screen, so I started doing cartoon voices. You know, I wanted to still work, that's the only thing I knew to do, and you know, my ego, I guess, needed it too, to work. So I was doing cartoon voices, and I did the voice of Alexandra on Josie and the Pussycats for many years, and Casey Kasem played my brother on that show all those years, and we became very good friends, and my daughter's named Casey. And Mighty Orbots and Super Friends, and a lot of the different cartoon shows, and many of them are still on. And then the 25th anniversary of the Mickey Mouse Club was really the year that started all of the reunions and all again. They got a bunch of us back, and we were doing parades. What year was that? 1980. Okay, you were there at that. Yeah. And do you remember, we're doing a parade, and they have us on a big float, and we're all up there, we're just, this is the first time we're back together in all these years, and we're just waving at the crowd, having a wonderful, wonderful time, and the float stops, and some guy in the crowd looks up at us, and he goes, "The original Mouseketters? I thought you guys were all dead." We're all going, But from that, they took 6 of us, I think it was, and they put a reunion show together. And as I mentioned earlier, we were doing 6 shows a day, and of course now our ears are all sequined. They were beautiful, sequined ears, and our names were in sequined, and we're wearing, you and I were bright fuchsia, I think, and we were beautiful adult costumes, versions of the Mickey Mouse Club costume. And so we did that all through the 80s, and a lot of touring. Bobby and I did shows at the Hollywood Bowl for Walt. It was the Walt Disney extravaganza. For the 4th of July, we did a show there. And Bobby and I did a 60-city tour, and then we did a world tour. Whenever there'd be an anniversary, a Mickey's anniversary or a Mickey Mouse Club anniversary, they'd send us someplace. And so it's been great. Like I said, once a Mouseketter, always a Mouseketter, and thank goodness that, we did
Walt Summit.
right. Came down here for that. And then our last reunion show was our 55th anniversary, and that was at Disneyland. We did that. It was Cheryl and Dawn and Doreen, Karen, Tommy, Lonnie, Bobby, myself, and Mary. So there were 10 of us for that.
Right.
So it's been fun.
That's awesome. How about you?
I've been working mostly after Mouseketters. I've never stopped working.
But nothing for Disney after that.
Nothing for Disney after. In fact, I was thrown off the lot. Well, I went to visit Annette. I used to get into the Disney studio because I made friends, good friends of the people in the makeup department and the wardrobe department. Not always, because I love going to the studios. And I went there, but the guard said, "Now, Tommy, you can't go on. I need the sets now because they're all closed sets now. You can't do that." Well, I was walking out from the wardrobe department, and Annette was just walking into one of the sets. I said, "Tommy," came up, gave a big hug, and he said, "Come on in, watch a shoot." I said, "Well, they told me I can't." I was like, "I'm the star of the movie. Come on, you can come in and watch." I did, and I got thrown off the lot. Yeah, the guard said, "I told you you can't go in there. You're out of here."
Did they throw her off the lot too?
Not quite. But I worked in movies or in television after that, just doing bit parts. I always played a little juvenile delinquent. I had lots of hair, a big duck tail, and I was always a smart-ass kid. And so they'd get me on shows, and I didn't do a lot of acting. When I made a living was as a singer. I was playing clubs, and I was in nightclubs, doing 6 shows a night as a singer. I played Vegas. I was in a singing team, a comedy team for quite a few years, and I sang on tour with Teen Magazine and Tiger Beat Magazine and Jansen. And then one of my last jobs as a singer, I was a backup singer for Johnny Mathis. And I toured all over the world. It's where I met my beautiful bride, Aileen, over in Korea. She was a dancer out of USO, out of New York, and she did backflips down the street to catch my eye. And I did it. I followed her down.
Can you demonstrate it, Aileen?
And we are celebrating yesterday our 44th wedding.
Awesome.
She's my rock. She's the one that keeps me straight, keeps me going. And we have 2 beautiful children. I went on from being a performer. In fact, right after the Johnny Mathis show, I decided I wanted to become a makeup artist. And I had decided before that I liked doing bullet hits, and I didn't want to do beauty makeup, not knowing that the years I'd be known as a beauty guy, where I'd make up all these beautiful movie stars and made a very, very good living with it. I spent almost 40 years as a makeup artist, nominated 7 times for Emmys, and I won 1. Other had a wonderful, wonderful career, and then I was always a steward on the sets. I was always one to do the contracts, always the person that other members of the trade in the trailers and other union crafts would come to me for advice on the contract. I was on the executive board at our union for over 12 years, and they said, "Why don't you run for office? Why don't you run for business rep?" And I said, "I'm a makeup artist." Well, long story short, I ran, I won, and I'm now in my 10th year as a representative for Makeup Artists and Hairstylists Club. And I just got elected for 3 more years. I'm almost 71 years old, and I'm still working, so I'm very, very fortunate. I had a great career. I'm in my 3rd career, and I plan to keep on working. And Aileen wanted me to retire 6-7 years ago.
Keep working, keep working. After the Mickey Mouse Club, I was in a public school, and I did join for a short period of time. I went to the same school that Tom went.
And also, you were in our act.
In your act?
Dick and
Donna.
We used to do dance exhibitions in clubs. I forgot, we'd do the twist.
Right.
It's when the twist was a
You
craze.
forgot who the girl was?
This beautiful girl was and she was sort of, it was a comedy team, so she was our foil also, so we had a lot of fun with her in the act. I forgot you were in that.
Yeah, we did that act too. So, I went to Hollywood Professional for 1 semester where Tom went because we went to Australia. Then I came back and I went to public school again. Did the Donna Reed Show, My 3 Sons, Run for Your Life, Mr. Novak, and was really becoming frustrated because during that time I finished high school, got married, got divorced, had a little baby boy, and wanted to, number one, express myself creatively. So I put an act together and went around the world as an opening act for George Gobel. Then it was the Mills Brothers, Trini Lopez, and then eventually wound up in Vietnam under the guise of USO, but I was brought in by a production company from Australia. And I figured if the guys can stay 18 months, I can at least stay 12. So I was in country from 1968 to 1969. During the Tet Offensive, I arrived. And what was so funny, I wanted to be identified as this hip, young rock and roller that did impressions and could gimmicks with the audience and dance and sing and had a rock and roll band. Inevitably, the guys would recognize me in the audience. Here they are with backpacks and guns. They'd just come in from the field, and they would all stand up and start singing the M.I.C. I couldn't get away from it.
No wonder we lost the war.
Not to be a straight woman. But that's true. That's true. That would go on all the time. And then came home after the war. And through circumstances, I wound up being a promotion lady at Warner Brothers Records. And we brought artists from, let's see, we'll start off with Gordon Lightfoot, Alice Cooper, Santana, Tower of Power, and of course, Old Blue Eyes, because Mr. Sinatra came out of retirement. And I remember one day we got a call from Sergeant Weiss, who was Mr. Sinatra's manager, and he said, Doreen, you know, Mr. Sinatra is quite concerned. He hasn't been hearing his records being played on the radio. I went, oh, really? And they weren't. Went into my boss, I said, we have a problem. Within 48 hours, Mr. Sinatra could hear his songs being played across the United States. And of course, it was a minor thing that he did have reprieves, which had just merged with Warner Brothers Records. So it was very important he heard his songs on the air. And then after that, I left and went to work for Frank Zappa. And those were the days when I was being the bad girl and the risque girl. Whatever Frank did, I had to top him once. So it was a period of my life where I got a little carried away with myself. Right, Johnny?
I wasn't there.
So and then after that, I could go on to some other jobs, but the most important was the last 10 years I've been working at Warner Brothers in business development and strategy. And basically, it is restructuring the entertainment business as we know it today because of the internet and the piracy that goes on. And I can't express how exciting it was to be involved with the international offices of Warner Brothers around the world, trying to restructure the industry. And I always say to any group that I speak in front of, please do not do piracy. it's not the big artists that have to worry about the money, but it's the trickle down of those royalties and residuals that the little artist gets, and all the other industries that support the creativity of our art form. But that's what I've been doing, and I just retired from Warner's. I've been retired for about 3 years. And so now I might get mixed up with these guys again.
All right, Johnny? Last but not least.
When are we going to be done?
Good. I want to hear what you've been doing.
Oh, what I've been doing? Well, I can't tell you about that. No, I can't. Well, I have a business. I produce music for special events. That's my quick answer. And that came about because I love these old songs all my life, and I love dance band records. And a very good friend of mine has a wonderful collection of 78s and from the dance band era, which is not the 1950s. It's 1920s and 1930s, a time that was very unique, and people have no idea how rich it was in the art of so many fields. And one of them was music, and it was a time when there was live music everywhere. If you heard music, it was live, unless you were at home playing a record. If you went to a restaurant, you heard music, there were live musicians in the room. And there was a space in the restaurant, even if it was a small restaurant, there was a little space for people who wanted to dance to music, because it was all dance music, it was all danceable. And Tin Pan Alley was at its peak, because the music industry had, music publishing in the 1700s was, the money came from selling printed sheets of music and performances, live performances. And when radio came along, it became so much easier to promote music, and it was just the first thing on public radio which started, commercial radio started in 1922, and it was a big deal. And the first thing they did was put a microphone in front of an orchestra in some restaurant or ballroom, hotel, and there was just so much great music and talent, because if you were a musician and you were a member of the union, first of all, you would have to be able to sight read any arrangement without making any mistakes just to become a member of the union. You could work every night of the week. There was so much work everywhere. And it was rich, and there were so many great musicians who doubled on other instruments. They could read a chart on the saxophone and then put down the saxophone and pick up the clarinet in the same arrangement, and then put down the clarinet and play a violin. And you could turn the reed section into a string orchestra. And it was thrilling, and you can only imagine it listening to these old records. And now they've been cleaned up digitally, and it's just all that has inspired me over the years. Ever since I was a kid, listening to my grandparents' dance band records, nothing else seemed to be as inspiring. And I liked a lot of the contemporary music, but nothing did it for me like these old dance band records. And I always wanted to sing. When I was 5 years old, I was learning the words off of the records and singing all the time in the car, whenever I was near So I always thought, God, wouldn't it be great to be able to sing a song like that and have a band that sounded like that behind. So I tried to recreate that, and you know, the musicians are not under contract to me, so but I get a lot of jobs, and each one is like another production. I have my favorite musicians that I call first, and if they're available, I'm lucky. It's really tough when I get a job a week before the event, and it's on a Saturday night. All the best musicians are usually, and hardly any of them, anywhere, can play a saxophone and a violin, and read the arrangement. Not just play the instrument, but read notes the first time they see it, at any pace. I can count it off, you know, slowly or fast, and they'll be right on top of the melody. I really admire them. I don't know how they do it, but I really appreciate them, and it's very, I love my job, finding these old orchestrations that people threw away, usually, and some of them are very hard to find. Sometimes I just have a few pieces, you know, the third saxophone and the drum part, you can't do much with that. But if you find the first saxophone and the first trumpet, and you have the piano part, you can actually play that arrangement. You can figure out the, you know, and they have wonderful arrangers in those days in New York, writing out dance band orchestrations and concert orchestrations for all the new songs. And that was a tradition that started before radio, because, and before records, the only way to make a song popular was to get it into the hands of band leaders and performers who were on the vaudeville circuit, and suddenly it just was a big boom when commercial radio came on, and we had these wonderful music, and then we had a union in 1943, I think. The musicians union went on strike, and that was the end of it. And then record companies learned that they could sell records without a full orchestra, and then rock and roll came along. We got a guitar and a bass, and a drummer. They can sell records.